Hello, and welcome to Lens of Hopefulness with me, your host, John Passadino. In this episode, I interview D. E. Foster, or D as he's called. He is a medical researcher, and he authored a book called Benzo-Free, The World of Anti-Anxiety Drugs and the Reality of Withdrawal. D was very frank and open and honest about his journey of becoming dependent on a benzodiazepine and what the after effects were. I know you'll enjoy this interview with Dee and our frank, open, and honest conversation of our experiences with these types of drugs and with dealing with our anxiety disorder. Thank you. And if you don't mind, please subscribe, and so you'll be able to see all the episodes and subsequent ones. I'd really appreciate it.
Analyzing life.
Considering the answers.
Lens of Hopefulness with John Passadino.
With guest
Author D. E. Foster.
Welcome, Dee.
Well, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's great to be here with you because I have to tell you, I just finished your book, Benzo-Free, The World of Anti-Anxiety Drugs and the Reality of Withdrawal, and I bookmarked so many different things. I was like, yes.
Because well, thanks for reading that. I appreciate it. That's
and this is, by the way, this is the cover of Dee's book, Benzo-Free. As I just said, it's available on Amazon, and I encourage anybody to read it, but especially those who are anxiety sufferers. And I don't mean to laugh at that. I don't think it's funny at all.
No, but we got to laugh at some of this, John. We got to laugh at some of it because it's so intense sometimes. So, yeah.
And so I want to say you did a fantastic job of layering the issue of dealing with anxiety. I'm a lifelong anxiety sufferer. I have all my acronyms set up. GAD, general anxiety disorder. Yep. PD, panic disorder. Yep. HD, hypochondriacal disorder. And phobias. I put the phobias as a cherry on top.
Yeah, they're special, you know.
But Dee did a fantastic job in explaining the definitions of all the types of anxiety, and then you get into the medications. And I love some of the things you say. You say one of the key problems with mental illness is its innate invisibility.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that seems to be. There's a lot of health conditions out there that aren't recognized or people don't talk about enough or aren't really in the media. And I think anxiety, it pops up on a little story here or there, and they talk about it loosely, but they don't really dive into its significant effects on somebody's life. Now, that's what we don't see. Yeah.
Can you give us, our listeners, a definition? Layman's definition, because you get into scientific stuff too, and you cite so many sources, but I'd like for you to give us a definition of what anxiety is first.
You're going to catch me on that one, aren't you? Thank you. And the way, I think what I'd like to take that to is anxiety in the realm where I talk about it is basically an effect of where anxiety is when our system responds to an outside stimuli of some type, and then it revs up our system. So basically, it's a fight or flight kicking in. It's basically excitement. Glutamate runs through the body, and we get excited and ready to do things. Anxiety becomes a problem when that happens all the time. And that happens without what I call breaks, anecdotally, which would be GABA receptor, GABA going, because GABA is one of the neurotransmitters that slows us down. It calms us down, whereas glutamate hypens. Then there's other factors that are involved, of course, but those are two primary ones. So in my opinion, when it's a problem is when it becomes consistent, when it becomes chronic, and when it becomes something that affects our lives significantly. And a lot of people deal with it on that level.
And to varying degrees, as we both know, to the point is, and I'll give use myself as an example, and then you could talk about yourself, is I got to the point where it was hard for me to function. I've had generalized anxiety for as long as I can remember, and then it evolved into panic disorder. and I would get panic attacks on my job or in any situation. Really, it could be a family gathering, and I'd have to leave. I talk about fight or flight. Panic attack is fight or flight, and you feel like you got to run because you just want to get away from everything, and you feel like you're dying, and
You feel like you're dying. It's incredibly intense. Yeah.
yeah, and so I talking about my medication journey is I resisted taking anything for the longest time. And I had a psychiatrist that said, actually, a neurologist said, because I kept, saying to the psychiatric people, no, 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 I don't want to take anything. I don't want to get addicted. And I went to a neurologist to seek help. Maybe you could help me with this. He was like, you need to be on medication. So that's when I gave in. Now, that was decades ago, by the way. So today there are more holistic approaches. And so that's when I started on a benzo, and which you're going to talk about. And it's been a journey, which I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but
It's okay.
it's I actually needed something at the time. Let's put it that way. And that is your story too, because you say that you were given Klonopin, but you weren't warned about what the effects might be. So let's talk
And interesting.
about.
So, yeah, I actually wasn't even given it for anxiety. I was giving it specifically for stomach distress, so gastric distress. I've had
Okay.
chronic stomach problems since I was a child. So,
Oh,
truth be
okay.
told, it probably has been anxiety related all along the way, but
Yeah.
I was never diagnosed with a anxiety condition. I finally went to a GP around 2002
Hmm.
who decided to try me on clonazepam, which is generic for Klonopin,
Yeah.
and decided to prescribe. So I started at 1 milligram. I finally worked my way up to two, and I took it for 12 years, not even thinking there was any problem with it. Not, I just didn't, it's just a drug my doctor had told me to took. So I kept taking it. I think it helped me a little bit, but it wasn't dramatic. And then, of course, when I discovered what had happened and tolerance set in and everything else, my whole world, basically crashed down around me. And so since then, for the last 11, or actually 13 years now, I have been working on helping other people who are struggling with these medications, and also people working with people struggling with anxiety, because if we can direct people and help people find healthier alternatives to the medication, we save lives. It's that simple.
Yeah, because getting back to the drug of choice, and this goes way back, and I believe you mentioned in the book, songs about the use of drugs, like
Oh
running
my
to
gosh, yeah.
the Rolling Stones, running to the shelter for your mother's little
Yep.
helper. Moms were given Valium when they were stressed, taking care of the kids, and it was common, just like drinking at one time, take a shot or something at one time was the
Exactly.
way to go. These drugs were dispensed, just like opioids were dispensed for pain later on. We had that crisis. But
And it's gotten a little better, but not significantly better, John. I mean, you can still see in TV shows and movies, people will pop a Xanax, pop an Ativan. I mean, we still talk about it just flippantly, like
right,
it's
right, right,
nothing. It's like an aspirin, it's like ibuprofen. That's the way we treat it.
right.
And, we probably shouldn't. So,
So the you were talking. I'm going through my notes from your book. You say, I think it was 20. Let's say about 3.6% of the world's population suffer from anxiety. It's estimated that depression and anxiety disorders combined cost the global economy about $1 trillion US
it's
dollars.
crazy.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Now,
And it's probably growing since then. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So the getting back to my story, why I took the drug, I eventually gave in to take it because, again, I was to the point where I had trouble functioning, and I needed to do something, and it actually made me feel a lot better. And the problem comes with the withdrawal when you stop. First, it's doing damage, and let's talk
Yeah.
about the damage it does first.
Sure.
Talk about the
Sure.
damage it does
Yeah,
first.
let me back up just a little bit. Since I wrote the book, which came out in 2018, learned more things, and I've become a medical researcher since then. So I've published 7 papers on benzodiazepines now, co-authored those papers, including our paper which introduced BIND, which is a term called Benzodiazepine-Induced Neurological Dysfunction. And that's a protracted state of neurological dysfunction that we saw in the studies that has happened after this. So that's what we work with a lot. And so basically these drugs, typically when taken occasionally, um, don't really have much of effect. Most of the time, if they're popped one, you take maybe one every couple of weeks or whatever. Most of the time, that doesn't lead to dependence. And we're talking about dependence here, not addiction. And it's important to make that clear, but it's physical dependence to the drug. And
Mm.
that's what we're talking about here. And when that happens, there is actual our nervous system becomes altered. Both central and peripheral nervous system becomes altered. And
Yeah.
I can go into details on that if you like, but basically it changes how we respond to things. And not only is there only a problem coming off the drug, like you mentioned, but actually also there's tolerance. So the
Mm.
drug tolerance is basically when the drug stops providing the effect it was providing, and thus people tend to updose. They tend to increase their dosage
Hmm.
to get the same benefit. Well, eventually these drugs, they don't keep working the way they always do. So a lot of people notice they have a problem when they reach tolerance and the
Yeah.
drugs stop working, but then they have to come off. And we have tapering protocols I worked with people on that last for 2 years long just to come off the drug.
Uh,
It's that potent and it's that difficult. So, but I also want to make sure, and one thing I want to say up front, if that's okay, I just want to
sure.
make sure I get this out there. But if somebody is taking a benzodiazepine or that similar drug or like a Z drug, please, whatever you do, don't stop taking the drug abruptly.
Hmm.
It can lead to a lot of complications. It can cause a lot of problems. Please work with a medical professional and work on a slow tapering process to come off if that's something you choose to do. I just want to make sure I never want to forget to say that to people when I speak on podcasts. So,
It's absolutely dangerous, yes, to go cold
yes.
turkey. We'll say use the old term cold turkey, which people that
Yep.
came from the heroin days. But as far as I want to talk more about addiction and dependence, but I could tell you
Yep.
this: when I started, I told my story about how I started because I really needed to take something, and multiple doctors told me to take something. I asked the pharmacist, my local pharmacist, how bad is the addiction to this? Because I'm afraid of getting addicted. He said, let me put it this way. He said, you would come crawling into this place begging me to give you more
Mhm.
if you didn't have some and you were addicted. It's
Yep.
powerful. It's even more powerful, you might mention it too, than heroin addiction. I mean, the
Mhm.
withdrawals from it.
The withdrawal, and that's where the
Withdrawal.
difference of addiction and it's not that you can't develop addiction to benzodiazepines. Of course you can.
Yeah.
Most of the people we work with, though, we're dealing with dependence, and they are definitely two different conditions, and they are unique. It's one thing we always want to emphasize because a lot of people that take the drugs, they always call it addiction and they say it's addiction. Well, that can happen,
Yeah.
especially when you've taken the drugs concurrently with other meds like opioids. But by themselves, as prescribed, it's typically dependence. And I would say 90% of the people we work with aren't dealing with addiction. They're only dealing with the physical dependence, but that is a huge thing. So all in of itself.
Yes, totally agree with you. Again, as a panic attack, and you mentioned this that sometimes people carry a safety dose with them.
Sometimes they do, yes.
I'm a carrier.
Are you? Okay.
I bring with me a Xanax tablet in case I
Yep.
have a panic attack. And you know what? I don't really need to have it with me, but I'm dependent on it. I need to feel it's in my pocket.
Yeah.
Now that's a dependence problem, psychologically dependent. And if I leave with home without it, I panic because I say, what will happen if I don't have it with me? And I know that sounds pretty sad.
And how often have you used that dose?
Very rare. I've never, hardly ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's the confidence it gives you knowing you have a fallback, knowing you have something, and that relieves some of your anxiety about being out in the world without that backup.
Right.
And I totally get it. And that's why for some people that makes for some other people though, they don't want that rescue dose. They just want to go out in the world because they're afraid they're going to take it. And it's so individual, John, as to who needs that and who doesn't. So
Yeah. And you were talking about dependence, physical dependence is when the body adapts to the drug, requiring more of it to achieve. This is from your book, by the way. This is from Dee's book, Benzo-Free, which I read cover to cover, and it's chock full of great information. I give you tremendous props for putting this together. You really did a great job. Requiring more of it to achieve a certain effect and eliciting drug-specific physical or mental systems if drug is abruptly ceased. Now, I want to talk to exactly what happened to me. I was told, I finally gave in, and he said, take 3 of these a day, 1/4 milligram. And I did. Okay. I took it 3 times a day. Everything is groovy. I feel great. But guess what happened? It's not as effective. I'm not feeling it as much. Take 0.5 a day, John. It's okay. You sure 0.5 is okay? That's 1.5 milligrams. Yeah, it's fine. Now I'm taking 0.5 3 times a day. I'm not feeling that. I can't have trouble sleeping at night. I'm going to give you a 1 milligram pill.
So now you're taking 3 milligrams a day.
3 milligrams a day. And I want to tell my story, which you tell so well, about the tapering off. I did taper off, and I literally got a pill cutter, and I cut a piece off of the morning dose first. And I did that for a week, or maybe it was 2 weeks. Then I cut a piece off the middle of the day dose. Then I cut a piece of the evening dose. So it took me months and months and months. But like what happened with you and you talk about, I started feeling anxious. And I'm saying, what's wrong with me? I'm getting so anxious. It was the withdrawal. I'm convinced of it, that it was the withdrawal coming off of it, because my body was so used to it.
And you were tapering. One of the things to keep in mind, too, is the potency. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. When you say you were taking at the top, whatever, 3 milligrams a day of Xanax, that's equal to 60 milligrams of Valium.
Wow.
So both Xanax and Klonopin, and also Halcyon, which we don't provide anymore, are 20 to 1 on the rate compared to Valium. Diazepam, which is the one we use as the base to compare everything to. And Ativan is 10 to 1. So these newer drugs are so powerful. So when you say you upped another 0.5 milligram, it doesn't sound like much, but it's a big number to jump up.
Now, yes, I realize that now, and I will tell you that I'll say that I give credit to the people that helped me along the way, but I also will say that they said to me, "Don't worry about it. Just take it." I said, "But what about the addiction?" "Don't worry about it. Take it. You need to take it. You need to take it." Little did I know, but they didn't warn me. They didn't warn me that your journey to come off this stuff is going to be a rough one.
And a lot of them didn't know. That's the problem. A lot of them don't know. Dealing with the medical professionals, this is what I work with. I work with a lot of them in research. I educated them through trainings and stuff like that. There's still majority of practitioners, medical professionals out there who don't truly understand the consequences of long-term use of benzodiazepines. They don't know and they don't get it. Some have started to. The education program's been great. We've made a lot of progress. In fact, just so you know, we in last March we published ASAM guideline, which is American Society of Addiction Medicine guideline. I was on the panel for that, and we got that out there. It was the first medical guideline that even talked really about tapering protocols for coming off benzodiazepines, and that was a huge progress for us to have made. But it also shows how little medical practitioners really understood of the long-term complications of these drugs.
You know, I read an article. Yes, I read an article many years ago about drug use, about just generally the over prescription of everything, including antibiotics. And the doctor that wrote the article, I can't remember his name, but he said, with every single pill you take, no matter what it is, think of it this way: there's a little bit of poison in it.
There you go.
Now, not literal, but even like. And people who need Ozempic for diabetes, I'm glad it's there for you. People are starting to take it for weight loss. If you have a weight loss problem, by all means. But there are always repercussions. There's no magic pill.
Thank you. I was just about to use that exact same term, John. That's what I think of too, is we want the magic pill. We still want to believe in the magic pill, but it doesn't exist. And I agree. The way I say it is every medication comes with side effects and possible long-term complications. The trick is to weigh that against your benefits. And that's the trick. But the problem is most of us aren't told what the side effects are, and especially aren't told what long-term complications they are from some of these classes of drugs.
So what should people do? Let me know what do you think? What should they do when they are prescribed something?
Educate yourself, number one, is to find out information. My book's out there. You mentioned that. I run a site called Uneven Life. It's at unevenlife.com, where we actually help with people that are coming off these drugs, but it's also got a lot of information about them, and they can go onto the website. There it is right there. You can find information on anxiety and information on benzodiazepines. It's chock full of it. I've done 2 podcasts on this I launched my podcast in 2019, so I've been doing benzo-free podcast for some time. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of sites that provide that. Get educated yourself, understand what the drug is you're prescribed might be. Talk to your doctor about it. Remember, you have the right. I would never tell somebody to not go with doctor's advice. I can't do that. I'm not a medical professional. I always have to say that.
Right.
So I don't give people medical advice. But you have the right to go seek another practitioner. You have the right to go get a second opinion. And if somebody's prescribing something for you that you don't believe is right for you, go to another doctor that you feel is listening to you, and somebody who is more educated on this subject. And unfortunately, there's a lot of medical practitioners who aren't. That's just the state of the business right now. It's sad, but it is still true.
Thank you for that. And I have seen a trend over the last few years that doctors, well, I got to tell you, like you were prescribed a Klonopin for a stomach issue. I could go 10 years ago. I can go to my MD and say I'm having trouble sleeping, and zip,
Yep.
write a script
Oh, yeah.
for something. Today, my MD, my primary care MD, would not do that. He'll just say you need to see somebody about that. Like he'll refer you out, and then they're starting to because I still see a psychiatric nurse or psychotherapist. They're starting to prescribe what they used to be was allergy drugs. Like there's one called hydroxyzine, and and I have suffered from allergies my whole life too. I'm laughing because it's like my whole life. But when I was young, and I was born in 1958, folks, by the way, so I've been around a while. When I took over-the-counter allergy drugs back in the 80s, say, they made you drowsy.
Yes, they did. Yes,
Oh
did.
my goodness! And so I avoided taking it unless absolutely necessary. Well, the psychiatric world, I'll call it, is going back to prescribing some of those old allergy drugs because they're supposed to be not addictive. Hopefully they're not, but yeah.
As you were saying about the side effects and everything, about the poison, a little bit of poison in all these pills, it's important to realize, well, I did most of my research and my experience with benzodiazepines. Z drugs are similar. They're actually a class called non-benzodiazepines, but they're similar. But there's also a lot of other psych meds out there, SSRIs, SNRIs, psychotropics, all these different classes. Unfortunately, a lot of them have similar problems too. And so it's easy to substitute one of those for a benzo or for a Z drug. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're seeing some complications, especially with some of the newer classes with the SNRIs. And we're seeing some similarities. So that's why it's good to learn about the drug. Any drug I take now, I do my research. If I'm prescribed something, I look it up. I look for information both from the pharmaceutical company about side effects, but also on the web, I look for what are people saying about this drug. You want to get some information, try to get it from legitimate sites and understand the possible complications before you wind up. This, I mean, John, you know this, but the people I work with, this can be completely life altering. It is, for some people, a tortuous process coming off these drugs. It's something that most people can't even comprehend what people have gone through. And some of us, I am now 11 years off Klonopin, and I still have neurological damage from it. And I still deal with that every day.
And can you talk about that aspect of it? What did you feel? What are you feeling today? This is like a 3-part question.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
let's start with part 1 and 2, and then I'll go to part 3. So what exactly did you begin to feel? And how did you Did you taper off, by the way, or did you?
I did. I tapered off for 18 months. So it took me that long to come off of 2 milligrams of Klonopin, which, as I mentioned, is the same as 40 milligrams of diazepam or Valium. So it's still a pretty high dose at 2 months, and I'd taken that for 12 years. So, by that time, I tapered off slowly. I had problems tapering, and I had symptoms kick up, and I can share those with you in a sec. But it was when I finally took the last dose that it really kicked in, and the first couple of years off of Klonopin were hell. And I have everything from akathisia, which is a very common symptom, which people don't know. That's inner restlessness. It's like restless leg syndrome throughout your body all
Yeah.
day long. It's a very difficult. It means people can't sleep. I've had anxiety, I cognitive loss. I still have some memory loss,
Mm.
depression, overwhelm, panic attacks kicked in. And on the physical side, I have had abdominal pain. I had pelvic floor dysfunction, air hunger, flushing, inflammation, distension, paresthesia. I have neuropathy. I have peripheral neuropathy. I have urinary complications, vertigo, slurred speech. I've had throat tightening, spasms, muscle tremors. I can go on and on. I had about 73, I counted one time, distinct symptoms coming off of it because it alters our nervous system, and our central and peripheral nervous system affect everything we do and every part of our body. So it shows up in a lot of different ways. The good news is I'm down to probably now 4 or 5 symptoms that are more annoyances. Now 11 years off, and I've gotten to where I could live a pretty normal life. But
And that is
it takes
because
time.
your body begins to adapt back to its former.
It's basically a process of homeostasis for those who are familiar with that, meaning what happens in the body. One of the primary mechanisms that happens with benzos, just so everybody knows, is the GABA receptor. Is that we have a GABA A receptor in our bodies, and that receives the neurotransmitter GABA. And GABA is actually a neurotransmitter that calms us. And of course, glutamate is like its opposite. It's the one that excites us. Well, when you take a benzodiazepine or drug like that, it binds with that same GABA A receptor, thus enhancing your calming effect. It calms you down. But as it does that, the receptors adapt. They adapt to that. They down regulate because they're getting more and more signal. So they become less and less receptive to that signal, that calming message. And so when that drug is finally taken away, or when it adapts enough, you start to get some symptoms. Now those receptors are left where they cannot receive the normal GABA produced in the body because this artificial drug binded with it. And now we're left what I call is without brakes. So we have the gas pedal, which is glutamate, which revs us up nonstop, but our brakes aren't working. And we can't calm ourselves. And we wind up sometimes in a 24/7 state of excitability. And it is a mess if you try to live that way. So,
Did you feel symptoms while you were on the Klonopin that
I,
as well?
I didn't recognize them, John, at first. The way I discovered it, what was wrong was I went to a doctor and a new doctor, and she told me, she prescribed me Prozac, and I didn't know why she was prescribing me Prozac, and she said, well, that's so to help you come off the Klonopin. I didn't know I needed to come off the Klonopin. And that's when I looked it up. And as a lot of people in our community have done, they look online and they start to read horror story after horror story of people coming off this drug. I'm
Yeah.
one of those people. So that was one of my panic attacks. I went to an all-out panic attack that night, pretty much freaked out. But thankfully, I didn't just suddenly cold turkey because I was so afraid. I decided I got enough information. There's a manual out there called the Ashton Manual, which
Yeah.
has saved, thousands of lives because of what she wrote and what the work she had done. I found that helped me to come off the medication slowly and to actually process through that.
I see. And I was trying to bring up the Ashton manual
Yeah.
on the website. It might be a little hard for me to find it right now, but getting back to I think it's out here. You have a bunch of resources.
Actually, right there on my website, if you typed Ashton in the search on the very top bar, it would come up as one of the options. So they
Okay.
can find it from my website at unevenlife.com.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, and it's a great website, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
For it really it works hand in hand with the book uh, for everybody to go out there. And again, it's a godsend for somebody like me, because when I'm relying solely on one voice coming to me, I'm grateful for those who have helped me along the way. And then you start Googling and you get like 100 different things. Of course, you get thousands of things today. And not all of them have been curated. You have spent
Right.
your life, well, a big part of your life, last 10, 12 years, whatever, it is, curating information and checking and double checking, verifying, and saying, I know this
Yeah.
stuff works. Yeah.
There's so much misinformation out there. We all know that. It doesn't matter what your belief system is. It's just it's a lot of information. Some of it's wrong. So it is important to try to find good information. I can say that we've always been evidence-based. I'm a medical researcher on these and on teams, so I actually have gotten into the data. I've gotten into the scientific side of things to understand what's
Hmm.
working with this. There's a few, I would say three, including my own organizations that I would totally trust within the benzo community.
Hmm.
And I'll be happy to tell people it would be Benzodiazepine Information Coalition, which is at benzoinfo.com, the
Okay.
Alliance for Benzodiazepine Best Practices, which is at benzoreform.org, and then mine at unevenlife.com. And mine used to be benzo-free or easing anxiety. We now call ourselves Uneven Life. All
Okay.
three of us are completely scientific based and have worked in research and have worked with medical professionals, or the other two are nonprofits and they both have medical professionals on their board. So the information from those sites, if I had to tell somebody to get started and they were worried about a drug they were taking, I would say start with those three sites and you're going to get solid information, accurate information.
Fantastic. And I just found the Ashton manual so people can see what
Good.
we're talking about here. Let's see if I can bring it up. The
Yeah, there it
Ashton
is.
manual, there it is. And you cite it often in your book as well.
Yep.
So getting back to what we were saying about the withdrawals, you talked about the withdrawals and the tapering, and I really appreciate you sharing your personal journey that way, because another aside uh, path to this is, and where as opposed to where things were back in the 70s, 80s, it started changing a
Yeah.
little bit in the 90s, is people didn't talk about this stuff.
No.
They hid it. And I will say, I in the 60s, 70s, I had many relatives, like a dear uncle who was an amazing man. He was so funny and intelligent, and all that, but he suffered from anxiety and he drank to suppress it, but he never talked about it. He would never say, I'm feeling anxious. He just
Right.
drank and knocked himself out, and that's the way it was. Now people can talk about this, so I'm really grateful for especially
Oh,
people like
no.
you who
No,
document it.
thanks.
I wanted to talk about also, you talk about other solutions to anxiety, like managing
Yeah.
the fear, chapter 13, managing the fear. And you say another one of the methods you mentioned, I highlighted, says another method is to remember to enjoy life despite your current
Yeah.
situation. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, that took me a while to understand or to come to that realization, John, because it was when your life is in so much distress, it is hard to let the good in. That's the way I view it. It's like, something good would happen, something small, maybe during the day. Maybe it's the smile on your child's face. Maybe it's, something, whatever it is that happened that would normally lift you up. We kind of have that message in our head. Well, I can't be happy right now because this is going on. And for those of us going through withdrawal, that's what this is that my life is horrible right now. I can't let that in. And I blocked that. I did that a lot along the way. And then I started realizing I'm doing the opposite of what I need to do, which is I should cling to those things and I should suck them dry, is the term I would use, which is when something good happens, hang on to it, suck it dry, and get the good out of it. Those little good moments, they do start to build and they do help to counter some of the depression. And they do start to, I think, make a difference. So I realized that about halfway through my journey. I think that's been one of the smaller things that's helped me make a difference is to let the good in and realize that there is still good in the world, even if I'm in pain for most of the day. But there are other things that happen, and to let that in and to balance your life out.
Thank you so much. That helps me. Hey, I'm getting a free psychotherapy session here.
No.
I really appreciate it. I'm
Sure.
telling you, every day is a challenge when a lifelong anxiety suffer for all those out there. We're talking a little bit because we both experienced the pain of this, and I think our ability, even our pre-production, Dee and I were, just trying to smile and chuckle our way through a couple of things because we know we need to do that.
Yeah,
It's really part of how we cope
I know.
because we know it's such a serious situation. I wanted to mention also another, as you got into holistic stuff in chapter 13, you were talking about the natural path. And
Yep.
you say what a lot of people say, including me. I could quote this myself, but you say, I was never a meditator before benzo withdrawal. Sitting still was not something that appealed to me. I was always on the go, needed constant stimulation. I was like, did he read my mind? Hey, wait a second. Copyright. Like,
I
hey,
understand.
he stole this from me. Wait a minute. But seriously, yeah, that is exactly true for me. I avoided meditation and I do it today. I could say I'm not great at it, but that's part of the meditation thing is not to judge yourself, right? So,
Thank you. Yes, then I think that's one of the things that prevents most people from diving into meditation is they think you have to be perfect. And that's the opposite of meditation. Meditation is about just doing the practice, and it's okay if it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But if you can just get yourself to keep doing it and become a habit, it really helps. It helped me a lot. In fact, in our group at Uneven Life, we work with mindfulness. We do mindfulness sessions, helping people just try to focus on, other methods of working through things. We do some CBT work. We also do some alternative therapies work. And so we're always looking for something else to help. What I usually call is my tool belt. I always think of it as the tool belt, which means what are your tools to manage the fear, to manage the anxiety, and what do you have ready for you? What's handy? For me, meditation was one. I did yoga, and that was ready. And then I would have breathing exercises. I might have, some other form of vagus nerve stimulation or something else that I could always go to when a panic came on or when stress was really high, my symptoms kicked in or something. It's about having those tools because those natural tools, they do amazing, they're amazingly effective on what we're going through, and they're a nice alternative to another pill. And that's what got us into this trouble in the first place.
I I agree with you 1,000%. You also talk about mindfulness and the difference between mindfulness and meditation. And you say, I like the way, by the way, you do a Q&A thing. You have
Huh?
throughout the book, it's
Yeah.
you ask questions and you answer them. It's like where the reader are asking these questions
hmm
and then you answer them because you know the questions and the answers, which is fantastic. I was just thinking about this today about being mindful because
hmm
as much as I've been into trying all different things, meditations and yoga and Tai Chi and all this other stuff,
Yep.
overthinking is a major issue with people
Oh my
like me.
God. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
anybody who's anxious or chronically anxious is an overthinker. The good news of that is it also means most of us are intelligent. Typically, it's actually intelligence and anxiety often do go hand in hand for a lot of people because we think too much, which means we
Mhm.
think through every scenario that might happen, and then we start to obsess on the scenarios and we start to worry about the scenarios. Whereas mindfulness helps us keep us present and it helps us to hopefully reduce and remember that, there's no past and there's no future really at the moment and to be in that moment. And I was ADHD and been my whole life. And so I was really good at not being in the moment. I was really good at having all these different thoughts and just bringing that down and trying to be in the moment. And that ties back to what we talked about enjoying something. It's like just live for now, for right now. And when you have something physical that happens to you, like coming off these drugs, it's so easy to be so worried about what this means. Is this permanent? How long is this going to last? Will I make it through this? Instead of just saying, today is not a bad day. I can get through today. And that's kind of where we have to focus ourselves sometimes, is just being where we are right now. Like right now, love this conversation I'm having with you. I'm having a ball doing it. That's all that matters right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I am trying to say to myself, don't worry about how the recording's going
I
to
know.
come out.
Yeah, I know. You got to do all the technical stuff. I just get to sit here and talk.
Because and that is really again, it's and where, by the way, who people are listening to the Lens of Hopefulness with John Passadino, and my guest is D.E. Forster. We call him D, and he has a book that I have on my Kindle that you can find on Amazon. Just in case you joined us late, let's show it one more time. Benzo-free: The World of Anti-Anxiety Drugs and the Reality of Withdrawal by D.E. Foster.
Thanks, John.
What I wanted to say was that I could easily sit here and start panicking over how this is coming out, but we're recording it. And so the counter to that is the worst that can happen is we have to re-record some of it, or I have to cut some of it out.
Yeah.
So the fatalist, that I come from a family where it was very traumatic Italian family, and my parents were World War II. They were incredible people, as far as loving and all that, but they had this like very fatalist view, especially my father was going there from the Depression era. Things were so tough, and so it was all survival and watch out, be careful, and that voice stayed with me.
Thank you. I had the same. I had the waiting for the other shoe to drop was a phrase my family used all the time, and expecting that other shoe to drop. And for those that don't know the term, it means waiting for something bad to happen because something else. And my parents were like that, and I was raised the same way. You're waiting for that bad thing to happen, but what kind of life is that?
It's I tell you, we were kept safe, but actually too safe because we became afraid. And so in order to survive, it's like be careful, and then you're not living your life.
Exactly.
A shame that happened. And my brother was the biggest sufferer of the four of my three siblings. He's very difficult with so many. I will say this also: he developed symptoms because he was on Benzodiazepine-Induced and SSRIs, and he ended up with Parkinson's syndrome and falling at the end of his life, and he lost memory. He had a form of dementia, and he was only 66 years old when he passed away suddenly. And we don't know exactly why, because there was an autopsy done, but we suspect it was the lifelong use of psychiatric drugs.
It really does a number on us.
Yeah.
A lot of people we work with now aren't just like benzo, aren't just something else. I work with a lot of people now that are taking 5, 7, sometimes have taken 10 psych meds. And I believe, and it's more anecdotal, but I believe that each drug enhances the system. Each drug seems to have an effect on the nervous system over time. And those who have taken several different drugs, including a couple benzos and maybe an SNRI and something else, it just heightens and reheightens and makes it that much harder, I think, to come off. And I just want to just say one thing, which is a lot of people we can come off these drugs okay. We just got to do it right. And it doesn't mean, life's over. It doesn't mean that this is going to be horrible. In fact, only about 30% of people on benzos long term actually have a protracted state of withdrawal, meaning it carries on after their last dose. So for a lot of people, this isn't that bad. I'm a minority. I'm a very part of the small group of people who still have symptoms this far out, 11 years off of Klonopin. But for most people, it doesn't do that. But for some people and for some of us, it's a very difficult process, and there's a lot of complications that go with it. So
thank you for wrapping that, because we both know that not we said it, or you said it earlier, and in the book says it, we're all different. Our body chemistry is different, and
exactly.
We're all affected different ways, and if you need something, you gotta do something. But let's take something for it, and obviously go for help. Getting back to the natural stuff, you talk a little bit about spirituality, and you say if you're a person of faith and relying on your faith, it just might be the saving grace you're looking for during this trying time. And then you even talk about aromatherapy, coloring books, dancing, drumming, essential oils. You cover all of those because anything you can do to help the cause I think is what you're saying. You try something. Try
Yeah.
something.
Try
And
something. The worst thing you can do, especially in the conditions that we have coming off these drugs, is to sit there and think about it.
mm,
And that's what too many people do, because what we do is we wind up in that fair loop. We wind up with ruminating, looping thoughts over and over again, and we make ourselves worse. The one place that we help people coming off these drugs is typically with um, reducing their anxiety, because we notice if we can help reduce the anxiety and the worry, then we can reduce the symptomatology a little bit. We can bring them down a little bit. They're not so bad. And so we're always looking for alternatives to help manage that anxiety. And like you said, these are all really great techniques, more holistic techniques to help with that. Spirituality was one of the ones I discovered. I mean, I was born and raised Christian, and I kind of
Hello there,
wondered.
Bernie.
Oh, sorry. And I kind of wondered, and but I came back to my relationship with a higher power during this time, and I did notice people who had that faith sometimes did a little better because they had that to count on. And so having that to get through, and but it doesn't always have to be that, it can be something else, but just other things to focus on. You mentioned even like Tai Chi. I just started Tai Chi not too long ago. I've kind of moved into that, and I've been loving it. And it's something new for me, something new to learn, but also something to keep me moving, to keep my mind a little busy, and so that I'm not just focused on my own problems. I can see people in our groups at Uneven Life all the time when we do these live groups with people, and so many people in those groups are just stuck thinking about their problems. And it's really hard to help them, kind of nudge them to get them back to start to do something. And sometimes it's a little as take a step out of your house and sit on the front porch for 5 minutes, because some of these people haven't left their house in days. And
yeah,
so it can be a small thing, but then we build on it and we try to get them. The term I call is expanding the box. We often build a very tight box around us when we go through this. And if we can help people expand that box and try to get back some normal life back into what's going on, it helps them get through it and not focus on the negative aspects of what they're doing. And with anxiety, it's the same thing. If we can keep moving forward, anxiety is always there, the fear's there, but sometimes you have to do a little exposure therapy. Sometimes you have to push out a little bit and try something and realize, hey, that wasn't as bad as I thought it might be.
thank you for that incredible uh, talk and lecture on
Thanks.
what so many go through. And
Yeah.
I wanted to point out too. I think we mentioned it earlier, and I know it's mentioned in your book on your website. But you also have, and what I was trying to bring up before while you were talking, is you're on YouTube. Let's see if it comes up. The Benzo stories, and there are a bunch
Yep.
of things. Like I'm googling YouTube, so a whole bunch of things came up showing D and the work he does. So you have, I think, two different podcasts. Is that correct?
Yeah, right now we hadn't done it produced in a couple of months. We're coming back because we're reworking the style. But I had the Benzo-Free podcast, which is coming back, and
Okay.
Uneven podcast. But we have over 200 episodes out there of episodes already on those two podcasts, and you can actually find us on YouTube at The Uneven Life. So it's at The Uneven Life is our handle. But
Okay.
also, if you go to the website, you can see everything we produced. So it's all there on the website. Everything we've ever done, the videos, the podcast episodes, our articles, everything's on the website, and that's a good place to find most of them.
Great. I really appreciate that. So everyone who's listening to Lens of Hopefulness with John Passadino and D. Forster, check out the podcast. Also, I did, and I have to tell you that the reason why I booked you, and the reason why I booked DE, everybody, is because I saw a tremendous level of credibility in his experience, his
Hmm.
research, and his work. It's I know he's not making millions on this. He's not one of those. The way I mean, the same with me, because my lens of hopefulness is to help people. It'd be
Yes.
nice to be able to, if I was able to monetize and make a few bucks to pay for like a couple
Hmm.
peripheral things, that'd be great. But it's more about getting the message out, and I really appreciate that about you.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. I still haven't broken even yet in 10 years of doing this. So, but I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. And there's so many people that need help. And I know we're making a difference, and that keeps you going, when you know you're
Yeah.
making a difference. Yeah. And I just want to say, I appreciate your podcast. I didn't find it until we started talking, and now I've been listening to it. And I really love the work you did and your approach and what you've been covering. I just wanted to say thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, thank you. I said to my wife early because we were getting our 2025 tax stuff together and reporting on my losses for the year.
I know, exactly.
I said, well, guess what? I made, I have like $38 in royalties on my book, and I made, like $16 on my Medium article.
I run an S corp, and I can tell you, I've been a tax write-off for 10 years.
I have an S corp too, and I said to her, but we're going to have to report on the losses too. I like to come in my mouth. I said, but I know I have like several years to do that, so it's going to be okay. because I started doing this as my second career after being laid off in 2021. I was like, I'm going to have a second career, we thankfully, I'm very grateful that we don't exactly need the money. Thank God, that we don't. But I see sometimes other people in this field who are raking in tons of money. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, good for you. And I don't want to knock anybody, but there are televangelists that are like multi-millionaires that have a great formula going. But there are people like us out there that, and I don't mean for us to toot our horn, but we're on the ground here, folks, and we are working it for ourselves and for everybody. So, hey, we're going to give ourselves pats on the back. Look at that.
You don't do this if you don't love it and you don't get something from it. So, I tell you, when I run the groups and I talk to somebody and, we have groups of sometimes 20 people and just live Zooms, and I hear what they're going through. And then somebody says, thank you. It's like all of a sudden everything you do makes sense and it's worth it and it doesn't matter. And like you, I mean, we're not going to be starving with my wife working and everything else. We have enough to live, and that's why I'm allowed to do this. And I will admit that. But would I like to make a living doing it? Sure, someday, but not at the expense of doing it just like you, how we're doing it. I always want to make sure we're doing it where we're not, I don't know, but I just want to be careful how I go about it.
But I want to thank you once again for your frank conversation, for sharing the details of your life, so that others may get better. I'll leave it that way.
Yeah.
And we talked about the book and the website and the podcasts. And
thanks.
I really appreciate the frank conversation once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it being here. It's been great.
This has been Lens of Hopefulness with John Passadino.
Streaming on all platforms.
Spread the word.